Hey, what's up? I'm Coach RT3.
And I'm Netta What?
And we're the Upgrade Guys. Today we're grateful to have Dr. Locatelli Rao. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's correct, yes.
That's correct. Cool. We're happy to have him with us today as we are going to be discussing a little bit about everything rehab and training, or the intersectionality between the two, because obviously me and Nat are trainers. And Dr. Loc is a physical therapist. So let's find out, who exactly are you? Where do you reside? How did you come up into physical therapy? And just give us the whole backstory.
Yeah, so I'm in Pasadena, California, born and raised in SoCal, been here my whole life. Did everything straight through. Went straight through high school into college, and from college straight into PT school. Came out of PT school at a ripe young age of 24. That was many moons ago.
Wow.
It was just I'm a PT now. It was just a simple end result of just really asking first as an undergrad what it is I wanted to study. And from there it became, hey, what do I really want to do for the rest of my life? And so just following those two simple questions led me to where I'm at now. Graduated in 2002, went to go work at a super busy outpatient clinic. Outpatient was where I knew I wanted to be from my early days in undergrad, as soon as I got some volunteer experience in that setting. Became, a very popular local therapist, working at that clinic with the local orthos. Did good work, my best work that I could. But, I was less than 2 years out. And the day I saw 38 patients in a 10-hour day, I just said, man, I got to do something else.
Whoa.
Shit.
Yeah. So, so what was interesting at the time was that, I was helping out. I was taking care of like 3 physicians, local physicians. And, I told them, I was like, hey, like, I really don't know what I want to do, what I'm going to do, because, I can't be seeing these number of patients in a day. And they just said, hey, wherever you go, we'll be happy to send all our patients to you. And so with that, I just went off on my own. Started off in a 250 square foot little room, and, have kind of done something along those lines ever since then. About 11 years ago now, was diagnosed with a pretty significant illness, which meant I needed a kidney transplant.
Oh, wow.
So there was about a 6-year hold on my life, where I just kind of did the thing, trying to get by and just do the bare minimum to pass the time. And then finally 5 years ago, I got that magical call. And then, since then, when I first came back, I was super excited. I had the opportunity to take one really high level Con Ed seminar series. And at that point, I became a more discerning consumer of Con Ed. And so that, led me to where I'm at now. For a while there, I had all the experience in the world with the things that I saw and the things that sparked my curiosity. But really in the last 5 years, being able to reconcile that with people who are a lot smarter than me, has really been gigantic in leveling up my game to where it is now. And now that I've, it's only taken me, 18 years to be where I'm at now. And now I see a pretty clear path as to where I want to continue to go with this. So, so now I'm still a physical therapist. But one of my mentors that I did a clinical internship with, she was so good at, when I was doing an internship at her clinic, I didn't know 90% of what she did, but everything looked really magical to me. And this was as a third year student. And so, in my worldview, I didn't really consider her to be like a physical therapist per se. I'm just like, yo, she's a healer.
Right.
And so really that's where I'd always wanted to go. I just didn't know how to get there. And so now it's like, here is where I'm at now. And it's like, okay, this is kind of how I think I'm going to get there.
That's
And so
pretty
that's
dope.
where I'm at now with my continued pursuits.
That's dope. First of all, I want to say congrats on getting that transplant that you needed. That's a big step, and allows you to be here with us
Yep.
today, which is we have to stop for a moment and appreciate that. Um, I know that I've met you at FRA, and you shared a lot of your insight with looking at the human body through the lens of the FRS system, at least how we were assessing. And so I really appreciated all that kind of feedback. There was a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I know, right? I was just thinking in my head, where the fuck do we start with that?
So I guess the first question I kind of have for you is what what led you to the path of wanting to be a physical therapist? I mean, so you said and you kind of realized that early, and you decided like through uh or undergrad that this was the direction you wanted to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I first got to college, I started off as a business major, and I realized that I just didn't want to study any of the things they were making me want to study. And so I ended up changing my major to exercise science because that's kind of what I really wanted to do and study. But we're talking the 90s here.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do then was I actually wanted to be what would probably be considered today like a sports performance coach. That's
Mm,
really what I wanted to do back then. But back then there was really no career path for that, right? Like,
right.
so so here I am studying exercise science, and I'm going to the career center. I'm like, hey, I'm studying this. What can I do with this? And so the counselors were pretty straight up. They said, hey, typically our graduates go into four fields. They go to med school. They go into athletic training. They go to physical therapy or chiropractic school, or they become PE teachers. And the
All
last option
valid.
wasn't going to be for me, and the first option wasn't going to work for me because I don't do blood. And so I spent a semester down at USC in the athletic training room, and I actually thought I would enjoy it, but I actually hated that environment. Um, so then I said, well, we have a student health center, and there's a PT department. And what I didn't know, I knew it was competitive to get like a volunteer gig at that position, but also to be a paid aide there. But I just showed up, and the lady who was there, I find out later she's not only was she on faculty in the PT department, but she was also on the admissions board. She didn't tell me this, but she let me come in, and I volunteered, and I got to check it out. And once again, at this point in time, the question running in the back of my head is like, hey, what am I going to do for the rest of my life?
Right.
And whereas in the training room, you had a bunch of D1 athletes who just thought of you as like the water person and tape my ankles and pick up my
Yeah.
towels, right?
Yep.
To be able to get these different students and faculty that would come in, into the clinic and be able to give them a part of their life back, and I was like, that's pretty damn satisfying. And so, and then of course, she was great at explaining the science behind everything we did. So you have the anatomy and everything else, and now you're applying the critical thinking to get someone to where they need to be in a safe manner.
Mm.
And so that was, it didn't take me very long to realize like this isn't even really work, and I still don't consider what I do to be work. It's just what I do.
So I got a question. With Asian parents, what did they say when you started studying exercise science? Did they let you back in the house?
No, actually, you know, it's funny because I did not grow up in a typical Asian household in that regard.
Okay.
So yeah, so in that regard, like they really didn't sweat it. It was just one of those things where you know, I was like, hey, I'm paying for school myself. Like, I don't live in your house anymore. I'm on my own, and this is what I'm gonna do.
Yo, you hit the lottery. You hit the lottery.
Yeah.
Oh, what the hell is this training shit? That's not a real goddamn career. What you gonna tell people to work out? Oh, hell no. You better go back to school with your stupid ass.
He
That's my mom.
he does a good impression of his mom. I haven't met his mom, but from all the impressions, I'm just like, wow, that sounds. I mean, I lived in Thailand for 5.5 years. I'm like, that sounds about, you know, like.
Oh, that's spot on, bro.
Where'd you go to? Did you go to USC?
Yeah, I went to USC for both undergrad and grad school. When I applied to PT
there's one
school,
thing I didn't like about you.
Rich is from you into UCLA, right?
Yeah, I went to.
Oh, okay. You guys are like rivals or some shit?
We were there about the same time, which is kind of interesting because I'm assuming you were there somewhere between 95 and 2002.
I graduated high school in 95, so in the fall of 95, I started at SC undergrad, and in the spring of 02, I graduated from the PT program.
Okay, yeah, I graduated high school in
95
95 too.
Yep.
Class of 95. It's 25 years and 25-year reunion coming up.
Good
What?
Yeah.
Lord.
I know.
Craziness.
Wild. It's wild.
Okay, so when you graduated, then you went to work at that mill, right? You said 30-some patients in 10 hours?
It was 3 every hour. But, you know, for me, it was one of those things like I just loved what I was doing. So like on the day I saw 38, you know, the day started like my day had my normal 30 for the day. But then like the one therapist called in sick. And so they're like, hey, can you handle, you know, these here and there? And I was like, yeah, you know, whatever, just do it. And so one therapist got sick and then the other had to leave early. And I was like, yeah, I'll just do it, you know, team player. But I got home and I was like, yeah, team player, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Fuck that team. So, so when you got sick, and if you're comfortable talking about it, it's all good. Like when you got sick during that time, like where was your head at? Like what kind of things were you thinking about? What kind of realizations did you come away with? Like what during that time period in your life, like what was made clear?
I mean, really, like what was made clear was that there's a lot of shit out there that you don't that you should probably know, but that no one has any interest in telling you. Like you would think that getting sick to that extent, right? That everybody and anybody would want to help you as much as they could. But that's not the way the world works. You know, I don't know if I really want to go too deep into that process, but let's put it this way. You know, nephrologists, who are the doctors that watch you, you know, during this whole time, they're the fuckers that own the dialysis centers. Right? So, you know, there's so many things that they could be educating you on to,
Right.
you know, get you through the process a lot better, but they don't. And are they doing that on purpose? I don't know.
What the fuck?
But like, you know, for example, like, so when you get sick and you need dialysis, right? That's one of the very few conditions that Medicare considers such a catastrophic event that you qualify for Medicare, right? So for those 6 years, I had Medicare as my insurance. And so you'd look at these billing invoices, right, from the dialysis centers, and you're like, wait, it costs the government, it costs the taxpayers $45,000 per month for me to be on dialysis, right? And I'm like, hey man, like, and just so that you guys know, when all was said and done, when I got my kidney transplant, the hospital stay, so on and so forth, that was about a $350,000 procedure, right? But I mean, that's 9 months of dialysis. I was on dialysis for 5 years, almost 6, right? So it's one of those things you're like, we probably should find a way to make transplantations occur more often in that regard, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, so really that was one of the big things that I picked up during that time. But like, you know, to be completely honest, when I was going through the ordeal itself, I mean, on dialysis days, you know, I'm on the machine for 4 hours, and in that time I lose about 10 pounds of water, right? So that really screws with all of your systems.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, 3 days a week, I wasn't even, I was basically a ghost. You know, I'm like 2% of a full human being. And so I would just, you know, come home and just lay on the couch or lay on the bed all day. And then like the very next day, I was kind of sort of ready to go, and I'd work and, you know, just kind of do bare minimum type things. And then next day you got to go through it again.
Wow.
Shit. My mom is a dialysis nurse, so I have some memories of like being little and like her having me like tucked off in the corner of some empty room in the county hospital somewhere. And but I could still hear the conversations, and I could like dialysis is such a fucking serious thing. And it's for some reason, like, I mean, obvious reasons, I feel like my mom was a Buddhist, so there was a lot of like, you know, talking about life and like what happens next and like what's the purpose of here and now and you know, shit like that. And I remember hearing a lot of these conversations when I was little and not really being able to process any of them. But like throughout life, like little bits and pieces would come back to me, which is sort of what made me ask you that question in terms of like what was your takeaway during that time period, and like what were you, you know, how did you feel about the future, like, you know, this indefinite thing, because you didn't know when you're getting a transplant, right?
Yeah. So actually, you'll like this story, Rich, because it paints UCLA in a good light.
Yes.
So actually, there are 4 transplant centers here in LA, and so, you know, we checked them all out. And, you know, when we went to the USC program, and we totally wanted to go there because, you know, I went to SC, and the hospital, the SC hospital, is like literally 10 minutes away from my house. And when we went there, it was such a shit show that we were like, there's no fucking way we're going here, right? When we went to UCLA, it was wham, bam, everything, all of our tests, paperwork, everything took less than 2 hours. And when we were at SC, the whole day took us 9 hours, including a 6.5 hour stay in one room. No one came in, no one checked in, just 6.5 hours of just waiting. Finally, a guy comes in, gives us 10 minutes of his time, and then we're done. Get this. So literally, like, I transferred my case to UCLA, where I officially established my case at UCLA. And about a year later, so this is right around 2010, if you guys want to look it up, USC's transplant program actually got shut down because they transplanted the wrong kidney into the wrong patient.
Oh, shit.
And it actually made the news, and the UCLA docs, you know, you could tell they were like having their fun with it, because they were like, there are so many measures and precautions we take that it is mathematically impossible to do that, you know, and they were just like jabbing, you know, it was just bad.
Oh.
Go Bruins.
Oh.
Well, the Bruins I mean, UCLA better have quality stuff as nice as that medical center is. I mean, I went down there. At least they're using that money I went to school with to putting it to good use. So
I got a question about the transplant. So I've read accounts of people who have had transplants from people, and then they somehow, like, it's almost like traits of that person or like cravings of that person has now manifested themselves like in your body now. Have you experienced anything like that?
I can't say that I have, but if you guys want to hear a pretty powerful story, I'll drop it on you. So it turns out that you know, when you get a transplant, and I ended up getting it off the paired exchange, not from, I didn't get it from someone I know, right? So one came available to the system, and it matched up to me, and I ended up getting it. So it turns out that the person who I got it from happened to be a 21-year-old female, African American female, who was incarcerated at the time of her death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember this.
And so it was pretty amazing because, you know, I didn't know the person or the family, but you know what you're allowed to do as part of the program is you can write to the family,
Mm-hmm.
and if they choose to, you know, they'll write back. But you know, I've posted about this, and you know, no one ever wrote back, and so to think about, you know, someone in her state at that young of an age to be able to make such a gift from her situation. I mean, I think it's pretty powerful.
It's very fucking powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so let's switch gears a little bit because I think you have just like a wealth of knowledge. I mean, anybody who follows you on Instagram, that's not the only place we can. Is that the only place you kind of do social media education stuff?
I'm trying to get my shit together and work on another platform,
Okay.
but it's hard. But but that's the main one right now.
So anybody who follows you on Instagram would see your educational posts and a lot of the things that you put out, which are always quality. Amazing stuff, actually, like painting, like showing you actual like cases and things of that nature. How did you, I think also what's important here is the connection that I have to you and that Nat initially has to you is through the FRS system, but that's not all that you do, and that's not all that you're a part of. And I think that is important to share, because I think what you are able to share with people is that there are bits and pieces of things that you can like integrate together and bring in together. So can you kind of explain to everybody how like all these pieces, like the I guess I would say the evolution of like your process, like when each piece kind of came into your timeline and how they all integrated?
No, of course. So when I first came out of school, you know, it was just, you know, if you really, like, if you think about it, like in PT, you have the assessment, right? And then as a PT, you're going to typically intervene with manual therapy of some sort, exercise of some sort, and maybe modalities of some sort. And so assessment, exercise, manual therapies, right? I mean, everybody under the sun has something to offer that falls under any of those three categories.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, when I first got out of school, Gary Gray was a big thing. I mean, I probably should have gone to osteopathic school given how much I wanted to learn to manipulate and things of that sort. And so that's where my early pursuits went. And over the years, you know, looking back at it now, what I didn't realize was like I had a bunch of different weird assessments that I had pulled from all these different courses that I took. I had a bunch of different manual therapy interventions, and I had a bunch of different ways of exercising. And to be honest, I'll admit something now, you know, just to keep it interesting for myself back in the day, I used to be like, hey, you know, for this month, I'm going to only rehab someone with, I don't know, dumbbells. See what I can do there. I'm only going to train someone this month on big Swiss balls and just limit myself to that. I'm going to do rehab with only body weight exercises and just, you know, just do that just to keep it interesting for myself. When I when I came out of transplant, when I first came back out of that, I ended up taking the Movement Link series, which is Claire Frank's 4-weekend seminar series.
Mm-hmm.
And what she did was she did a wonderful job of tying the assessment, expanding my thought of what an assessment was, to then she expanded how manual therapies and TheraX all kind of sort of tie in. And then shortly thereafter, I took FRC, and so I had taken actually my very first PRI course about a month before I took FRC.
Mm-hmm.
And I took my first PR course, and like, I had no idea what the hell I just saw. I was like,
what was your first one?
Myokin.
Okay.
That's the one you took. And I took it and I was like, I don't know what the hell I just saw, but there's some really powerful stuff here, right? But then I took FRC, and, you know, I took FRC with Dre as the lead instructor.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was so many wonderful things that came out of it, because, you know, what Dre really did was, you think about all those things that I'd taken in the past on the exercise side, right? He basically threw it all in one simple flow chart with respect to how are you going to manage a joint.
Right.
And what was really powerful about that was I came out of the FRC weekend, and I was like, look, like, Dre's really distilled managing a joint down that anybody with half a brain could really follow the flow chart.
You would think that.
And really do a fantastic job of taking care of a joint.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I don't think anyone's ever heard this, but, you know, the pitch at the very end of FRC, Dre talked about, you know, we have these courses called FR, the FR release courses. And, you know, if you can't tell me when you're holding a neck, whether you're on splenius capitis, multifidus, or whatever, you're not fucking touching my neck. And I was like, oh, they can tease that out, huh? I got to go check this out, right? And so, you know, I was so amped for FRC because the concepts were so simple to me, but I was like, oh, but it all flows so nicely that I ended up, you know, making everything happen with my family, where I went to the second FRA in Austin. So I went to the second FRA, and that was really cool. That was the first time I came across Chivers and his monstrous brain. And I met so many cool people there. And so, you know, FRA does a really nice job of just saying, hey, like, this is how we utilize it. And so, you know, during this whole time, like the filter, you know, the lens is always going to be the lens, but the filter of seeing things through FRS was like, yeah, they make a really complex thing, and they've made it simple enough that you can be super effective with it. Yeah. And so during this whole time, you know, I went through, you know, the FRS journey, and slowly but surely I was trying to unravel the puzzle of PRI, which I'm still not even close to. But, you know, I've taken the Movement Links course, I've taken all these other things, and it was like, look, like, you know, what the ultimate realization I came to was that it's just a human body, but people are just calling things different things. But in the end, if you understand like some of the simplest concepts of open, closed kinetic chain, you know, where are you on the loading continuum? How are you trying to load this in? If you just think of everything in those through those filters, you're like, oh, okay, I can see how they're all trying to do it. They're just trying to go about it a little different way. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what I've done. It's like, well, they want to do this, and I can absolutely, like, I could be the guy in the middle. I could support any side, but I could also instigate on any side, right? Because I see the pros and cons of everything that everyone does.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, it's just like, well, at this point, it's like, for me, my responsibility is to the human in front of me.
Right.
And so what I'm doing is just like, look, like, I think the biggest thing that I've come to realize, at least for myself, is as I've gotten older, like, I don't have time to waste, right? No one likes wasting time or money, spinning their wheels, getting nowhere.
Right.
And so now it comes down to, well, given the fact that most of the people that come to me are in some sort of like serious debilitating pain and probably have a fear of moving and have a psychological emotional attachment that's lowered the ceiling on where they think they can actually go with themselves. My pursuit has always been, okay, how do I get this person to really turn their attitude and outlook around? And in order to do that, I have to do things that are powerful and effective, right? And so that's where I'm at now.
On the day to day, is there like when you first meet the person, after you've talked to the person, you sort of get an idea like where that person's at, so to speak. Is there a way that you use the different systems? Like, is there a hierarchy, or do you see what's there and you're like, oh, this fits here, this fits here, this fits here, and then this is what I do first?
So to be completely honest, almost everything in my current state of practice, everything starts through a PRI lens. Because ultimately, these patterns that PRI has identified, they will give you the explanation as to why that person is running into these invisible walls with respect to some of their programs, with some of the things that they're doing. And not everybody has to go through a complete PRI program, right? But it really depends on what their goals are. But very early on in a program, I will include some FRC, because it's really hard to screw up cars, right? And cars are readily available and accessible. And if you give them that tool for self-assessment, but also for self-training, I mean, that's a win, right?
Yeah.
And so really, like, those two things, PRI and FRS, both of those things are relatively easy to program for home, right? DNS is very powerful in the clinic, in my opinion, and I'll probably, get a lot of flack for this, but DNS is horrible to program for home. I mean,
Why do you say that?
Please tell people what DNS is first.
Yeah.
I think PRI, DNS,
yeah.
Our listeners are like, what?
Yeah. So real simply, in FRS, I think the elevator pitch can basically be, you're going to make every single joint work as well as possible, and your brain will figure out what to do with those nice moving pieces. Fair?
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
With DNS, DNS is short for Dynamic Neuromuscular Stabilization. It comes out of the Prague Medical School in the Czech Republic. But basically what that approach is, whether you're Black, Asian, boy, girl, rich, poor, gay, straight, doesn't matter. All humans go through and experience developmental milestones. By 6 months, they should be doing this. By this, they should be crawling, so on and so forth, right?
Right.
Whereas, you guys learned how to throw punches later in life, swing a golf club, do all these random sport activities. All humans, as they're growing up, have to go through these things. And so, through that, we can basically come to the conclusion that these patterns are hardwired into our system, because you have to learn how to do certain things so that you can build upon them before you can ultimately crawl and then walk. And so in a DNS practice, you're going to put people in some of these positions, and you're going to ask them to transition in and out of them. You're going to ask them to move, and where and how they break down, gives you an idea as to where globally they might have some problems, so that when you put them in that position, that's why they fail. And so you then train that so that they now have that understanding again. Now, PRI is the Postural Restoration Institute. It was put together by a man named Ron Huruska. Easily by far the most brilliant human I've ever come across, like in this field. But basically, PRI looks at the asymmetries of not just the physical body, but of the nervous system, and looks to understand where the nervous system, specifically the autonomic nervous system, is, so that they want to be able to achieve within the system that we call the human body, the ability to alternate and reciprocate. So reciprocate means being able to get from one end of the spectrum, like flexion to extension, extension to flexion, internal to external rotation, but really from a state system to be able to go from sympathetic, which is where most people are, to be able to teach them how to access parasympathetic, because both of those two things, those nervous system states, will absolutely affect what your joints can and can't do. And so if you think about it, if you think about how powerful that ANS has over our entire movement system, and if you think about, I mean, like breathing has made a gigantic push into the news over the last, since COVID started, with James Nestor's book, so on and so forth. Ron's been preaching about that since the early 2000s when he started the Institute. So really, most people who come in with emotional distress because of pain, or pain because of physical injury, and so on and so forth, or lack of movement variability, because you guys understand that lack of movement variability is just a disaster for anybody trying to do anything. Yeah. Right? And if your lack of movement variability comes from a lack of state variability, like if you only understand a sympathetic existence, I've got to change that, right? I've got to give you the ability to rest and recover, because otherwise, all the manual therapy in the world, you're not going to be able to rest, recover, and take advantage of that.
So if I understand correctly, the reason that DNS is worse for homework is because how are they going to be grading themselves, so to speak, right?
Yes. When you have someone in a DNS position, I mean, when someone's in clinic with me, it's just a game of whack-a-mole, because they can't do this, so they compensate here. They can't do this, so they compensate there. Right. And then I can take anybody, best athlete in the world, doesn't matter. You put them in a really good, solid DNS position, because they're so used to compensating, they will fry out in less than 5 seconds, and they're done.
So it's funny, because I've had some experience with DNS since I used to for, I don't know how long it was, like almost a year. I was training some clients out of progressive motion with Dr. Joey and Josh. And they were both showing me a lot of DNS stuff, and they would have me set up in these positions and be like, okay, so when you're in this position, I'm like, oh shit, I can't even I can't even stay in this. It seems like such a simple space to be in. And it's like, I can't even manage that basic position that they have me in. And then they're trying to tease out little things. And I'm like, all right, this is just, I'm going to go back to FRS. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, that's not really our space. I mean, it's good to know about it as a trainer. But I definitely can see how that can be useful, integrated into therapy. And a lot of therapists, to me, in my opinion, I appreciate therapists like yourself, therapists like the ones we work with, who spend a lot of time learning all these different things, adding these tools to their space so that they can better serve the human being in front of them. Because I just think that, like, I've worked as an aide in a physical therapy clinic when I first got out of college, and I've seen, the 30, 40 patients as an aide, and I've just been like, how do we serve these people? Like, these people are not really getting quality.
We don't. And the insurance companies really don't care. And on the patient side, when the patient's looking for the cheapest solution, I mean, how is anybody going to win in that scenario?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is the cheapest solution is not necessarily the right solution, right? Or the appropriate solution for that human in front of you. It rarely is.
Well, I mean, I think it's so weird because, like, so just so that you guys know, I drive like a 22-year-old van, right? I just drive a little old van. I don't care, right? But like, like my monthly operating costs on that vehicle, including gas, including insurance, are less than $200.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what that does for me? It gives me the opportunity to buy really, really good food. It gives me the opportunity to go see really, really good practitioners, right? Like I don't. It just like cheap meat, like cheap food scares me, and cheap healthcare scares me.
Goddamn right.
It'd be like, yeah, I want to go to this physical therapist because they're willing to sign a $53 per visit with United Healthcare. And after, I pay them my $30 copay, they're willing to go and chase down United Healthcare for the remaining $23. It's like,
That don't make no fucking sense at all. I mean, I think Rich has experienced this as well, but like, just as trainers, I think a lot of times people have, like, I don't know, what do they call it, sticker shock or some shit, like when they start to talk about rates and they're like, and then, I mean, I try not to get butthurt by it, but it kind of annoys me. It's like, oh, but this guy charges $80. Well, then go do the $80 stuff with that guy. And when you come back, like, it's just going to you're just going to be with me longer. You know what I mean?
And so that is something that I used to have to do quite a bit, and I'm very grateful and lucky that that's not a thing for me anymore. But before, it used to be like, hey, like, you want to use your insurance, that's great, I get it. But understand that, the reason why we don't take insurance is because, like, we're here to serve you and not an insurance company.
Right.
But, we've got 40 other clinics here in Pasadena that will happily take your insurance, and I will see you in 6 weeks.
Yeah, because they don't do what you do. Period.
I would tell them, I'll see you in 6 weeks. Like, you can start on your path with me now, or you can wait 6, 8, 12 weeks, whenever you want.
That's always what it is.
That's always
Right.
what it is.
Yeah.
My mom has this saying. She's like, if your ass do something, do it right the first time so you don't got to do it again. You understand, stupid?
Yeah.
So, wait, back to the, so if I get in clinic, you kind of use DNS to tease out, like, where you should go, right? And then when you know where you should go, do you use the FRS stuff there, and then PRI overrides all of that?
No. I start everyone with PRI.
Right.
I will throw in FRS here and there as appropriate. Like, there are some FR things that I love using on a daily basis. And really it depends on what they're presenting with. DNS is one of those things where at the end of a session, if I've got, if we've got like 10, 12 minutes left, right? I will put them through, like, my favorite tool from FRS as a whole. Like, I think for myself, I'm a big giant fan of kinetic stretches, because if I can teach someone the concept of a kinetic stretch, I'll just have them do that as part of their home program. Right? I like kinetic stretches because in my mind, it's like, look, I get the benefit of the open or of the close kinetic chain activity, which is a big DNS thing. But really, a kinetic stretch, you're really just targeting the one joint, the two sides of that given joint, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then also, just so that they can, like, if you've ever had like a real good DNS practitioner do that thing to you, because really you're tapping into that subcortical system, you're tapping into something that's ingrained in part of you. The way you feel after being in a DNS a position and a transition for, you know, quite a few reps, you come up and you're like, oh, like there's some magical fairy dust that the nervous system really enjoys. And, you know, I like doing that just so that they can feel it. And ultimately, if they get to the point where, you know, I'm happy with where they're at from a PRI side, I want to be able to give them some of that programming, because ultimately when people are out moving about, you know, the other thing we haven't talked about is DNS is real big on the concept of being able to create the appropriate amount of IAP, intra-abdominal pressure, for the task that you're about to take on. So just for the audience, IAP is your diaphragm creating pressure in a postural stabilizing mode so that you can be safe with your motion. And that is a feed forward event. So meaning, if you guys want to test this right now, you guys can put one hand on your core right here, like your lower abdominal region.
Mm-hmm.
And with your other arm, go ahead and lift your arm up. Okay? So you should have felt your core kick in before you lifted up your arm.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a feed forward thing. Your body says, I'm going to lift up the arm. I need to create IAP to stabilize this, right? And the disconnect is when people cannot generate the appropriate amount of IAP to support that motion, or to support a squat, to support anything. And then that's when they buckle and now they extend through their back, or they find some other way to do it, right? But everything starts with having that IAP kind of glue everything together.
Right. That's the only way we transfer force, right, between our lower and upper
That's
halves, right? We're grabbing some sort of anchor. And if you have like jiggly shit here, I mean, if this is if this is not doing what it's supposed to do, right, how can you transfer that? How can you anchor that? You know, so it makes complete sense in the grand scheme.
And how big does so you like the Core 360 belt for that?
Yes. The Core 360 belt.
I've used that a little bit.
I've never used it.
But
So in Kinstretch, Dewey talks about different types of cues, right? Tactile cueing being a powerful one. I mean, that's exactly what the Core 360 belt is. It's just a tactile cue. You put it on, you're like, oh, I can't expand or create pressure into that chamber of my body. That's really what that is.
Got it. So with the PRI stuff that you get for homework, is it always how much of it is breathing based?
All of it is.
All of it.
Because it is through the exhales, right? That you are able to it's so one of the things that they want to do is to get the left side of your diaphragm to actually fully dome. That only occurs with exhales. Okay. But depending on positional manipulation, where you're reaching, your orientation, so on and so forth, they are now trying to manipulate on your subsequent inhale which part of your rib cage you're driving airflow into. Because if you think that let's keep it real simple. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sides of your rib cage. If you think that when you take a breath, all 4 sides equally fill up, that's 100% wrong, right? People do not fill up the rib cages. And so following PRI principles, concepts, they want to manipulate which chambers airflow goes into.
What's the long-term what happens long-term if you're not expanding enough, or you negate expanding into one section like over years or something?
You know, the base patterns that they talk about in PRI, everyone's in them. And so, you know, there are plenty of people that get through life that don't need PRI that are totally perfectly fine. it really depends on the demands you place on top of that system, right? So just a real simple PRI concept is that almost everybody overinflates their left front side, underinflates their right front side, underinflates their left back side. And, you know, for most people, they get through life okay that way, right? But it's when you add other things on top that now these asymmetries come into play. And all they're trying to do is make sure that you have more movement options.
Shit, now that you say that, I'm kind of feeling like, the hell my shit. I'm trying to like expand over here. It's not. I'm like, you know, FRS and like all this stuff that we do makes us like hypersensitive and hyper aware of shit that we do and don't do. And so
that's
now
the
that
best part.
yeah, so now when you like say something, it's almost like it comes into my brain and my brain is like, hold on. He said,
That's basically how it is anytime I talk to Loke. Anytime I talk to Loke, that's basically what it is. It's like I become like fucking, oh, wait, how do I move this more? No, that needs to move more. Shit. Yo, so all joking aside, like the first time that Loke did anything to me was, I think, was it FR? It might have been, I think it was FR spine. And it was like, yeah, it was shortly after I got in that car accident, right? Remember? And I was talking to you about all that fucking shit that was going on with my body. And I was just like, so he's like, breathe for me. And I was like, fuck you mean? So I was like, breathe? I fucking know how to breathe, Loke. What are you talking about, man? Like, I know how to create pressure there, all this shit. And he did this fucking thing where he's like he put like his finger here and he did this thing with my leg and he goes, okay. And he told me like, I don't, like, he gave me some cue to breathe. And then I tried to do it and I started shaking. And I was like, yo, what the fuck is this? And he's like, no, take a deeper breath. And I like fucking couldn't. I was like, okay, change plans. So he brought me over to the rings, and he had me like set me up in a specific position, and he had me breathe, and then I could do the thing he was asking me to do, but it was really fucking hard, and I started sweating, and then people started laughing at me, and I didn't like that shit. So like ever since that day though, like, you know, I've only taken that one PRI course, but I've made it a goal, and I obviously pay attention to all of Loke's posts, but like I sometimes now spend time in the dark at home, like figuring out where else I can breathe into in my body once everybody's gone to sleep. Like I'll do some mobility work and like find weird shit, weird lines of tension. But I'll also, like ever since that day, I've just tried to incorporate breathing into everything I do. If at least being conscious of it for a second, or if I start to feel like riled up or some shit, like I'll do a couple of those really deep breaths, just basically trying to expand as much as possible and paying attention to where I am or I'm not expanding. And that shit's just crazy, man. Like it's just fucking nuts.
Well, here's a little way of putting it that makes a lot of sense to you guys. There are 136 joints in your thorax. And so if you want joint afference, you got to get that rib cage to expand and shrink. Because really, so here's a PRI concept, you know, on your front side, or actually in general, like a part when ribs have air underneath them, like in that part of the lung, your ribs will externally rotate upward. And when you exhale, those ribs internally rotate. So now this is what we want. We want internal and external going on different sides, because to tie it in, like that's what happens. That's what should happen when we walk.
oh, science.
Yeah.
I mean, it also makes sense to think when you think about like actually like Nat's example and things like that. Like you do BJJ, so when you think about being in certain positions and needing to be able to breathe, if you're in any sort of grappling situation or you're doing anything that requires that you end up in an awkward position, even like being able to breathe is an important thing, right? How many times? I mean, people freak out and get and go nuts, or in certain circumstances might end up dying, right? Because they like, I can't breathe. But if you can find ways to breathe, or you can be in certain predicaments and have an exit strategy, I would assume that would be helpful.
So I even like after I took that, after I sort of realized some of what Loke was talking about in terms of rib extension, these things. I even started like I'll put the kids on me and I'll breathe so they'll move, and I'll put them here and I'll breathe so they'll move. I'll put them, and they think it's a game, right? But all joking aside, I was rolling like some months after I started playing with this stuff, or like, you know, inserting it in, and I got stacked by somebody like heavy as shit, and like he was just literally trying to crush me, right? And usually, like, you know, you sort of react before you start breathing fast. I was able to like sort of absorb, if that makes sense, more of that. And then I was able to like bounce him back out a little bit with my inhale and exhales. And I was like, oh shit. And I was just hanging out there, and he was putting forth effort. And I was like, I'm just going to hang out here now, because I'm actually like, I'm literally not very uncomfortable here, right? Because I got a bunch of flexion. I've got a bunch of motion in my hips, and I'm able to breathe here now. And I just waited, and he literally got tired. And it was like, I didn't have to scramble out of it. I just flipped him over. But yo, so if you do grappling, like fucking pay attention to Loke's breathing shit. That shit is a game changer for real. If you do anything, you should pay attention to that shit. But that's just like from my life, like a specific example, like a real world thing where that really came in handy.
Yeah. I mean, you know, really what they're trying to do in the world of PRIs, they're really trying to dictate where airflow goes. But, you know, there are other performance training applications of, you know, CO2 tolerance, but also breath holds, right? I remember when I first started, you know, there were a lot of things I couldn't do with my breath. You know, and I remember, gosh, like, you know, one of my wife's girlfriends, you know, bought a house in the same city we're in, and they have a pool. And so, you know, we're over there, and I was like, you know, it's been a while. I haven't done this since I was a kid. I really wanted to see how long I could hold my breath. Right. And so I just took a breath in, dunked myself underwater, and it was like less than 20 seconds. And I was like, I thought I could hold my breath for a long time when I was a kid, but obviously this is something I haven't trained. Right. And so, you know, ever since that realization of myself, that experience, I started training that as well. And so that's one of the things that I'll throw in with some of my clients, just to be able to learn how to give them more power over their breath.
What if you had like one resource or like one educational resource you would give somebody for breathing? What would that be?
I mean, really, the Postural Restoration Institute, their site has a lot of free content. And I mean, if they did a 9-week COVID series, right? I mean, the 9 weeks, each one is an hour. That series is worth gold, and it's up there for free. So you go there, and you're going to learn more about breathing and, you know, intrathoracic pressures and what goes on with the entire system. And Ron, who taught all of them, really talked about it through, you know, from a health perspective, just a general respiration, gas exchange type of perspective. So that right there is fantastic for anyone who just wants to begin the deep dive.
Got it. Look, Rich already putting in his goddamn phone. You see that shit? Okay. Do you got a burning training question or like therapy question for Loke, Rich, or education question? Cause I want people to, cause I know Loke, like we friends, so like I want people to know more about Loke as a person, cause like I think one thing that comes across from Loke is that he got a really good heart. And he really do want to help people, and that shit is very evident when you're around him. Like, even if you're, because I watch everything, so like I'll watch Loke, even if he understands something, and he's, because you did FR Spine how many times? 2 or 3 times?
I've taken Spine 3 times now.
Yeah, so when I was watching him, and I know he'd taken it before, and I know he'd actually talked to me about some stuff before he was lecturing, but he still looks at it almost just like, what else is there for me to learn? And like I said, it's just very clear that he wants to heal people. He wants to help people. So, like, we all know that about Loke. But let's expand our knowledge about Loke a little bit. We know you like to eat tacos. We know you like to play golf. What else are you comfortable sharing about people that most people might not know about you if they just know you from the internet?
I think I teased it, but you know, when I was in high school, I didn't even want to go to college. I wanted to go straight to UTI, Universal Technical Institute. I wanted to be a mechanic. And so there was a good while there where playing with cars was my hobby. My very first car was a pile of junk, and so like I had to learn how to work on cars, not because of fun, but because of necessity. But then, you know, that's kind of where I'm a big efficiency guy. So if there's ways for me to create efficiency within a system, it fascinates me. And so, you know, like my very first car was this old hunk of junk Ford Mustang, but you know, I used to do my own oil changes on that, and you know, that thing, because it had a V8, used to get about a cool 13 miles per gallon. But then like you know, I saved up some money, and I remember swapping out to like, you know, synthetic oil and synthetic fluids and things of that sort. And I remember the car ended up like averaging like 14 and a half miles per gallon. I was like, wait, what? And so one of my, you know, like in some small circles, I'm kind of sort of, you know, infamous, because one of the things that I did was I have an Acura NSX, like that's like my fun car. And one of the things I did was I took these newer style fuel injectors, found someone who knew how to do computer, you know, car computer mapping programming, threw these new injectors on, no other change. And, you know, almost everybody who owns an NSX does this now, but it was worth, you know, like 15 horsepower, 2 miles per gallon. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, so that was a fun thing. I guess for a while there, I am still, to a certain extent, a small time real estate investor.
Oh.
I don't talk about that. I also, within the world of real estate investing, there's a million different ways you can do things. I don't do it actively anymore, but one of the things that I was fascinated with and participated in a lot was actually buying debt.
Buy debt.
Yeah. So buying debt is a nice way of kind of sort of being the bank. So
Okay.
if you guys want a real simple example, like, so for example, like you can't really see these scenarios here in California just because the numbers are so big. But you know, like in Texas, right? That's where I did a little bit of it. Let's say you buy a house for say 50 grand, right? You put 10 grand into it, so you're 60 into it. You turn around and sell it for, oh, I don't know. You turn around and sell it for 95,000. Okay. Buyer comes in, and you know, they've got 20 grand cash, and so they're looking to finance 75 grand. And instead of going to the bank, you, as the person who bought the home and you're 60 into it, you're like, hey, yeah, give me the 20 grand cash, and I'll carry it on paper for 75. And so now they're acting as the bank, and you know, they're collecting a nice interest on that 75 grand, right? But let's say that piece of paper they're holding that says, hey, this person owes me 75 grand at 8% interest for the next 15 years. Someone like me would be like, hey, if you want to sell that, I'll buy that from you, but at a discount, right? Cash them out. And so, for example, I don't know if this is accurate, but let's just say you have a piece of paper that says 180 payments on a principal balance of 75 grand at 8% a year. You know, if I paid, I don't know, let's just say I bought it at a discount. Let's say I paid 60 grand for it. Over the course of those 15 years, if I just sat there and collected all my money, I would be able to tell you that my 60 grand had now made a return of like 14%.
God damn.
Right? Because you bought, because the cash flow itself was 75 grand at 8%, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I buy that stream of cash for 60 grand, right? My money's working, my money's working a little smarter.
Right. That's funny because Rich was just talking to me about this real estate shit.
Yeah, I was like, we should get into real estate, but we really don't even have a we really don't even have a clue. I mean, I just started in the market a little bit, just dabbling. But mainly because, you know, I had I had clients, I had wealthy clients and people who were really switched on and tuned into stuff. And it's like, this would probably be a good time. And these are some of the things that you should probably look at. And I'm just like riding that wave. So I can't give anybody any advice about what to do or what not to do. Because as my accountant said, he's like, all the market is legal gambling. So I just be careful what you do. Right. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
Loke, you said you're a big fan of efficiency. So, what are some tips you can give for people for like day-to-day life that you use that has increased your efficiency there in anything? It doesn't
Checklist.
matter.
Checklists.
Checklist.
Checklist.
Okay,
Got it.
got it. What about efficiency in terms of doing your homework? Like, Loke says I need to do this, this, and that. Well, I guess that's not really an efficiency question. That's just like how do you make it so that you know it's going to be appropriate for that person?
First thing, do it when you wake up. You don't think about anything else. Don't check your fucking phone. Do it. Get it out of the way. You're done.
I like that.
it sounds
I
good.
like that.
Yeah.
Do you have, how many kids you have?
I have 2 kids, 2 boys, 6 and soon to be 3.
One of them just had stitches, right?
Yeah, the young one.
What happened?
He was monkeying around, jumping on the couch, and bonked his head on the TV stand.
Oh.
Oh,
Oh.
Yeah, you guys want to hear something funny? So that story happens, right? He was jumping on the couch, hit his head, and he's screaming bloody murder. I go check on him. He's got this thing. We go, and he ends up getting 5 stitches. So maybe 2 weeks ago now, the 2 of them are playing in the older one's room, and all of a sudden they're both screaming, right?
Oh shit.
And the young one is screaming in the same manner
ugh.
that he did when he bumped his head. And I'm like, what the hell could have happened in his room? Because there's nothing in his room that could have really happened, right? That could hurt him. And so I'm walking over there and I'm like, did John lose his arm? Is it hanging on the floor? Like what could be going on here, right? And so John is standing in his brother's closet, because I guess that's where they're goofing around. And he literally took a giant shit on himself and on the floor. Because, we were potty training.
Oh. Oh fuck.
Yeah,
Were you mad, or did you get mad first, or did you laugh first, Loke?
I did nothing but laugh.
I mean, how could you be mad at that? I mean,
Oh shit.
it's I mean, it's kind of our fault when we're potty training, right? Like my son, we were fortunate. Our son, he did not want to shit at all. He was just like, he would hold it, I guess, all day at school. Because so the way he got potty trained actually was going to pre-K. And my wife was nervous about it because she's like, we're going to send him to school and then they're going to send him home, because they had already expressed at the school, like, hey, we don't do diaper changes and stuff like that. So, and we were like, all right. So we told him, hey, you're going to go to school, like, you're not going to have a diaper on. So if you need to use the restroom, you gotta talk to the teacher. The teacher will help you go to the bathroom, but that's it. Like, you're on your own. And he did fairly fine for the most part. Like, but he would not. We'd ask the teacher, did he, number 2 at school? And no. But he would get home, and he would be like, "Can I have a diaper?" And I'm like, "What do you need a diaper for?" "I just need a diaper." And I'm like, all right, so you give him a diaper, and then he would go somewhere, and then he'd walk around, and you'd be like, "What's that? Did you shit?" and so he literally was like, "Just give me a diaper so I can shit, and then everything will be good." And I'm like, "No, everything's not good, because now it's all over your ass, and I gotta wipe that." Right? So we kept trying to encourage him to get on the toilet, and he just would not get on the toilet. And it was just one random day, he just randomly decided for some reason that he was going to go get on the toilet and shit. And he was like, he told us, he was like, I just pooped. And we're like, where? He's like, on the toilet. And so we're like, all right, cool. But now somebody needs to wipe him. And now he announces, he's 6 years old still, and he announces that he has to go. He's like, I have to go poop. I'm like, thanks for telling us.
You know what that reminds me of? Look, are you a Kevin Hart fan?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
The Good Baby. You know what I'm talking about? The Good Baby. Good baby, did you poop?
good baby, did you shit on my floor?
Oh, fuck.
Man.
Okay, so favorite taco spot? Favorite 2 taco spots that you go? Were you 2 frequent taco spots? Unless you just have one.
Man, I mean, there are so many here, and like, so one of them would have to be the Avenue 26 taco stand, and it's really not even a taco stand. It's like one of those weird streets in LA where it's like not quite a street and it's not quite an alley,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like this long corridor that.
What
What part of LA?
It's near Glassell Park.
Okay.
So
Got
if you guys look it up, it's just Avenue 26 taco stand, but it's really like an alleyway, and it's just awesome. Because there's, there are the tacos, and there's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 different churro vendors.
They got fish
and,
tacos.
No fish tacos there. Best fish tacos, gosh, there's so many, but the small chain is there's a small chain. I think they've got like 5 or 6 location is Taco Nazo, Nazo.
I have to hit that up.
Yeah.
All right, hang on, because we've got some questions from people on Instagram. So hang on a second. I'm gonna look it up. I've got some. Even though I just put it up, I got some. Oh shit. Okay. First one. God damn, that's a lot. Okay. If you don't have access to an FRA, what's the next best thing to do?
Someone who can give you an FRA.
Yeah. I assume so.
If you don't have access to an FRA, just do your cars and avoid closing angle stuff.
Okay. That's what I was gonna say.
For closed angle stuff, for you guys that don't know, if you're like
Yeah.
YouTube, that means, anytime we're going into closing the angle of the movement, so going into internal rotation, going into flexion, any of those things.
Okay. First PRI course somebody should take. I think you kind of already, but yeah.
Any of the primaries will serve you well, although I personally would tell you to take pelvis last. Pelvis is, I had to, I treated the pelvis course when I took it the second time. I treated the pelvis course like a college course, in that during the quarantine, I bought the home study course. You have access to it for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I spent 4 to 6 hours every day going through the pelvis course.
God damn.
So they limit the access to it. Like, you don't have.
Yeah. So when you buy the home study course, you have access to it for 2 weeks. And then at the end, you have to take a test to get your cert.
Basically, how do you decide, like, if it's you should be treating it from a pain science standpoint or any of your other modalities? I think that's the way it should be written.
I'm not a giant pain science guy.
Oh, okay. So I guess that answers that.
I believe people need to be heard, but I also think that, in the most generalist of sense, you make stuff work right and the body's happy for it.
Got it.
Will you ever have your own seminar workshop?
The seminar, yes, I have something that I've been working on. But from a scalability standpoint, the upcoming subscription service that I'm going to offer is probably something that I will do first.
Tell us about that.
So I'm working on an online subscription service. I don't want to give away the exact model just because it's never been done before. But basically, I think I can say this and not give away too much. But basically, it's effectively what I will call a mass mentorship.
Hmm.
And is that going to be for trainers, PTs?
Like anybody who helps other humans move better.
Got it. When should people be on the lookout for that?
So to be honest, I've been working on my PRC application, which is due on Tuesday.
Okay.
As soon as I'm done with that, I don't know how long of a break I'm gonna need because the PRC application, I'm 67 hours into it.
That sounds awful.
17 papers.
Oh my God.
Shit.
Yeah. And so as soon as I send that off and like, I'm going to just let my brain chill out for a little while. You know, I have like some people that I'm working with on putting the online subscription service together.
What do you say? Like, I'm gonna just ask a random question to anybody coming out of physical therapy school or going into physical therapy school. I guess those are two different types of people, right? But what would you say to the person deciding to go into physical therapy school? And then what would you say to the person coming out as far as like how to approach therapy or their career?
That's the question I was going to ask right here.
Going into physical therapy school, I would say, you know, pay attention to the fundamentals because the fundamentals, specifically like anatomy, are going to serve you well later on in life. Learn all your special tests, your screening tests, so on and so forth, because the last thing you want to do is have a red flag scenario present in your clinic and you not know how to completely tease that out.
And then, so that was going
and then
in.
for the person coming out of school, understand that you don't know shit. So
That's legit.
That's the best one right there. You don't know shit. We don't ever know shit, really.
Yeah, but I mean, when you come out of school, you don't know anything.
That's real shit. No, for real. Shit, I remember when I first got certified as a trainer, I was like, oh, I know some shit. I didn't know shit. I knew zero.
You hadn't even had any bodies in front of you or anything, right? Like you just like, I know all this shit.
Yep. Get on the floor the first day, you're like, oh yeah.
The book said it's supposed to do this. The book said.
Yeah.
The book said.
The book doesn't teach you how to talk to people. The book doesn't teach you how to be emotionally intelligent. The book doesn't get you to be able to like empathize with the person to see where they're at and know where you need to come in that day. Like the book doesn't even tell you that those things exist.
Yeah.
That's all the Instagram questions I had, but should have put that shit up earlier. But we always have like a few questions we like to ask you before you go anyway though. Rich, you got any or you want me to run them?
Go ahead and run.
Last meal. What would your last meal be?
Tacos.
Oh, no. It would be anything, huh?
Anything. Could be two things if you want. Your last meal, shit.
Oh,
Yeah,
eat it
my
all.
last meal. Probably like on one plate, I'd have a bone-in tomahawk ribeye.
Ooh.
And then on the next side over, an entire meal of stuff from Newport Seafood, which is this Chinese, Vietnamese, you know, that southeastern corner of China, that border area, the cuisine from that area.
Oh shit. Newport Seafood. Got it. The one lesson that you will make sure your sons know.
They would have to learn how to I want them to learn how to learn.
Like that. One piece of advice for. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that's funny because that kind of, we were just talking about that before.
Literally just talking about
And
that.
how people in the United States are so damn stupid because of our education system doesn't teach people how to actually learn and actually like parse materials out and come to like conclusions on life. It's frustrating.
Or even have the viable things to the pieces to make a conclusion. One piece of advice for the audience listening, anybody who will listen to this.
One piece of advice, man, this life on this planet that we're all given this beautiful opportunity to experience, there's so much out there. Go seek it, go experience it, and leave everything better than you found it.
Dope.
Very dope.
So can you let everybody know where they can find you, or where the best places to find you, either on social media and in like person?
Yeah, so social media, the outlet that I prefer using is Instagram. My handle is Dr. Locrao, Locrao. That is the website that I own that I haven't put anything up yet. That will be coming, and when it does, I'll announce it. But if they want to see what my clinic is about, that's PasadenaPT.com. Obviously I'm in Pasadena, California. The site does need to be updated a little bit, but there's a little bit of the essence of how I run things. And my attitude is, really like, if you look at our Pasadena PT Instagram, our catchphrase is the power of great PT. And that's really what I believe in, that what we do, whether you call it PT or anything else, the ability to help people through this concept of movement, getting them to move better. Movement is everything to this body we're in.
Yo, you see that, Rich? Your thing just fell behind you. I think fucking there's a ghost back
I
there.
think it was like, it was moving. It was like, yo, movement is everything. I'm moved.
Yeah, that shit was right on time. It was moving and everything. That shit started moving by itself.
I wasn't meant to just be on this wall. I need to fucking move. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday. We really appreciate having you. It was great to get to know you a little bit better as well. And I think our listeners.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Great seeing you guys. And Rich, man, you have such a great voice for this.
Thanks.
He does, right? You got that radio voice.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
If you've been in SoCal, like it's like what was it, 92.3 back in
Theo, yeah. Yeah.
It's a very soothing voice.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a couple of people were like, "Oh, you should be on like late night on the radio."
Yeah.
Craziness. All right, but appreciate you. We appreciate all the education you put out there, all the information, and we value you. And
Greatly.
It's thank you for being on our show. Appreciate it.
No, thank you so much, guys, for having me. I love what you guys are doing out there, and I just wish you guys nothing but the best with everything moving forward.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, stay safe.
Much love, Loc.
All right.
Good to see you, bro. Take care. Stay safe, okay?
All right. Bye.
Thank you guys for watching or listening. You can find us at theupgradeguys.com, or you can find us on Instagram at theupgradeguys. Peace out.